About 40 years ago, I was working in a shop as a student at an after school job, and I would engage this one particular individual that I work with about some of the concerns for the future and changes in society. And he was a very obstinate individual. He would argue sometimes just for the sake of arguing or debating. And he would tend to push it to the point, being young at the time, just being a student, that he would attempt to frustrate me with his views. It was just part of his nature and his built-in sense of humor and self-entertainment. Well, on one occasion, one day we had been talking during the week as we went about our course of work just to keep from being bored with our duties. We had talked about everything from the future concerns concerning immigration control and all of this, which really was just a point of discussion. But one of the items that I would bring up that he totally disagreed with me about was the future applications of artificial intelligence. Now, bear in mind, we're talking about 40 years ago, when the closest thing to artificial intelligence as far as any kind of intellectual topic of discussion would go would be in arenas such as science fiction and that sort of thing, entertainment, like in the old Star Trek series and things like that. And at that time, we didn't have the technology in place, other than in theoretic and research, that could in any way be similar to what we would really consider in industry or science real applications for artificial intelligence, other than in the coming of PCs, personal computers, and the new handheld calculators. I'm 61 years old now, so when I was in high school chemistry, I was in a slide rule club. Now imagine that, a slide rule club, where we would go to contests and we would compete on skills to work out solutions using a slide rule. Then, as I entered into an aviation program, I remember using the circular calculators, flight computers is what we called them. And these were interesting, very good proportional calculators, manual calculators. And of course, you could go back into history studies and look at the Chinese calculator and all of that, the little balls on the sliding sticks. But isn't it amazing how far we came in just a few decades? Once exiting high school, I remember that it was just a few years. Actually, they already had some very crude, the first models of handheld calculators that would do simple math, addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, that sort of thing. Then it was just a year or so, and they came out with more advanced model calculators such as the TI model and the Hewlett Packard models that actually used the magnetic tape. And of course, at that time, they already had the large real type industrial computers in use for banks and things like that. I remember going on a tour in my senior year of high school. I was in an aviation program. I was fortunate enough to be in a high school that offered that, and where our class was actually taught by a commercial rated pilot and someone who loved aviation. And we went on a field trip to the Johnson Space Center, and I loved it. I mean, it was magnificent. And actually, in those days, it wasn't like it is now at the Johnson Space Center. The one I went to was Houston, Texas, or Webster, Texas. And nowadays, if you go, you're going to actually see mock-ups built specifically for public display. In the days back then when I went, back in the early 70s, the tour actually included real training hardware, and you actually got to walk around with people involved actually in the manned space program itself. And our particular tour guide that day, excuse me, the man we went with was our from our high school, Willie LeGrone, and a man I respect very much for his influence on young people in aviation. He's passed away now. I pay my due respects. But the man who gave us the tour was Dr. Richard Haynes. Richard Haynes is a well-known author, and if you want to look up any of his stuff online, he's a very interesting writer, Dr. Richard Haynes. His expertise was actually in the use of optics and in photo analysis and that sort of thing. He was the simulation, one of the simulation directors there at the Johnson Space Center. And actually part of his responsibilities in development was the use of mirrors and cameras while training the astronauts in their space environment, simulated space environments for optical measurements and that sort of thing, which they had to do during their craft rendezvous and all that. Well, anyway, moving on, I was exposed early on to applications of some of our most advanced industrial and space applications of what we had at the time as far as computer technologies. And it's amazing how fast industry has advanced even since those days. And when I really look back and having worked in aerospace now for quite some time as a traveling contractor, and recently finishing a new school with Airbus in applications for their particular series of aircraft, I am amazed not only at what was at the state of and level of technical achievement as far as applications for logic computers in aircraft systems, what is actually in place today and what can be used is not being used in America simply because the system hasn't been installed everywhere, is the new data link system. And let me just share just a little bit about this before I get into any biblical. I've worked myself when you consider military and civilian applications. I've worked with some of our most advanced integration systems as far as the logic, mechanical systems on aircraft that exist in industry in the world today. It is absolutely amazing what even some of the designs which are in service today, and these designs that are in service today are applying technologies which were available at the time those systems were designed, when they were on the table and when the production had not even started. Applications for these designs began and were actually had to go ahead for development at a time when some of the parts were being promised by vendors who were still in research and proving particular items. So understand, anytime you're involved in any kind of aerospace application or space application, that a lot of times the job will get the go-ahead, the green light, the funding, while certain systems or some components of those systems is still under development or being proved. Now, we're not saying that they're unrealistic goals. They are realistic goals for the most part. But now some of the systems of some of our modern aircraft designs, things that are actually in service today, are more advanced than what was on the space shuttle when it came out. When the space shuttle came out, the system, let's just take this one for instance, the auto braking system, which is not your most advanced system. It's basically a mechanical system that operates off sensors and rotational generators that go to a computer, which the computer then assigns certain braking pressures to different wheels. It's anti-skid, basically, is what we're talking about, for those of you familiar with aircraft. But on aircraft now, your systems for auto landing, your systems for in-flight control, adjustment, and all of that, flight configurations, we'll call that. When you consider the complexity and all of the sensor inputs that are going in from the aircraft now, I'm going to tell you right now, I just recently finished a certification class that demonstrates to us now that the aircraft systems, now we're not talking about just the aircraft itself, but the systems integrated with data link and all of that to your ground-based facilities is basically what I'm talking about. These aircraft basically can do everything without the pilot. Just about every task. And it's just a minor step to, and of course there's laws and regulations for applications that prevents it being total. And understand that there's good reasons for all of that. But basically now, if it were implemented as it is already in place in facility, in some airports in the world, the actual need for the pilot to do anything in the aircraft physically, he's become what could be termed a redundant component. Now, folks, that's kind of a sad state. It's not exactly complimentary to a pilot. I mean, a man who's trained for years and invested a great deal of money and time and experience to become qualified. The very idea that his job can be just put him in the seat as a redundant component is insulting. And it is personally insulting to someone's confidence and all of that who was sitting in that seat. It's like taking your young military pilot, your graduate from the Air Force Academy, and putting them in a competitive environment, which it is from start to finish. That's a competitive environment, and it takes someone who is exceptional in both physically and mentally, and in their personal character, to be able to even compete in that arena, much less to excel. But you take some of your most excellent students coming out of the Air Force Academy, and some of them are not even going to end up in work assignment, MO, actually being in the seat of some of the world's most advanced fighter aircraft, or whatever their particular goal is. We're coming on the age now to where that they'll be sitting behind a desk in front of a monitor with a joystick, and they'll be inputting signals or inputting signals to UAV aircraft because they can't get an assignment to a real, shall we say, F-22, whatever, F-35 coming up, of course. But let's move on beyond that now. I mentioned all that just to let you know I'm very aware of real world applications of logic motor computers tied in with mechanical applications in the real world environment. Let's look down just a little bit. I don't want to hold you up too much here and get to my point. But in some of the aircraft, the particular systems that I'm most familiar with in aviation today, as far as their applications in commercial use, let's take that. We're not talking military now. We're talking commercial use. They're going to be your Airbus. They're going to be, of course, your Boeing. And there's quite a bit of differences in applications, although they generally do the same things. And Embraer, now Canadair and all those, of course. But as far as your most advanced systems, Embraer, Boeing, and Airbus. And what I want to say about that is actually working in the environment of these aircraft. way the computers are set up, the sensors, the relays, the servos, and all that kind of stuff, mechanical interface, you have a situation where computers, which most of the time now they're set up in what you call an LRU, line replaceable unit. It's the way the boxes are set up, they're easily removed and replaced and installed in a rack type system in what they call an E&E compartment, and electronic compartment, avionics and electronic. And when they change out these LRUs, of course they are very expensive items, and of course they are bench tested and certified, inspected, and actually run through simulation before they're ever put on the aircraft for replacement of any other part. And when they put these systems back into the aircraft now, it's designed to where that it's most, shall we say, maintenance-friendly items, easy to put in, easy to install. And what's amazing now about all of your applications in service today is the aircraft runs its own test diagnostics. Of course, this is an interface of a whole different type of computer system installed in the aircraft. But the onboard test diagnostics does amazing things. It actually runs electronic test simulations through the aircraft at startup, whether you're running just your APU systems or main APU being your auxiliary power unit that starts and powers pneumatic systems and electrical systems on the aircraft from your batteries, ship batteries. But in all these situations, what I'm trying to say, without getting into too much detail here, is it is amazing. It is really amazing to be there, be a part, and watch and witness the aircraft actually think for itself. And it thinks on a level that is amazing, actually. The aircraft, for all intensive purposes, the new modern aircraft, especially the ones who are on the drawing boards for future, are totally different than what's in application and service today. And it's an amazing leap where we're going to be going. I won't be. I'll be retired. I'll be out of it. But it's an amazing leap where aviation in general, both military and civilian, is going in the future as far as artificial intelligence. Now, this is a real world. I actually see this stuff. This is not theoretic. And it's the drive to get there is for several reasons. One is safety. Primary. Everyone that flies understands that that's a major concern, safety. Another is security, which is tied in with safety. Another is reliability. Computer is not computers, not a computer, but links of computers, networks of computers are not susceptible to the same types of, shall we say, reactions that a human is. Emotions, for instance. The computer doesn't have emotions. And in fact, it would do nothing but cause it to operate at less efficiency. Of course, I'm sure that in the future we can develop artificial intelligence of computers, is what I'll call it at this point, to where that simulated emotions, from our standpoint, it'd be simulated because it's artificially produced. But as far as function goes, it would be in application a real environment of artificial emotion. Now, that wouldn't come to play in aircraft because emotions would not be a beneficial factor there, trust me, in application and run and use. I'm amazed at how some of the aircraft that I have worked with do things that in just a few years ago had to be done by a man. Let's put it, or a woman, or human. Let's just put it that way. So let's move on now to the next area, and let me, excuse me for moving the camera there. We'll try to get that back for you. All right. Our next point of discussion, of course, is I'm going to stay off the medical applications because I am not a medical doctor and I am not a medical technician. There are folks that are in that arena that can do so much more to tell you where that's going. So let's stay off of that one. But let's look at something that I was talking about 40 years ago that at that time seemed like science fiction to folks. And some folks would just laugh and say it's silly. When I was telling people, you're going to see the day when human beings are replaced by an artificial representation of a human being. And let me give you the first example of that. And I mean, I actually had people try to laugh at me for saying that 40 years ago. But I want to tell you it was prophetical thinking on my part. Because here, very rapidly and very soon, and for good economic management reasons, you're going to see artificial representations of human beings, humanoids, as you would call them, or an automaton, basically a humanoid robot, or an android, a representation of a mechanical human. That'll be setting, say you go into any of your major chain hotels or banking systems in the world. Whereas if you have a human greeter now behind the desk, a receptionist, they have to be trained in how to deal with people skills. They have to be trained in how to present themselves, plus their appearance is something that has to be maintained daily. And a lot of times the way they operate in efficiency depends upon how they feel that day, or whether or not they even make it to work on schedule or on time. And then again, the employer has to be concerned about such things as the human concerns, human factors is what they're called in business, to where that they have to take in things like insurances and benefits and vacations and all that. That is the human factors, along with all the other things that go along with it. And in some cases, dealing with unions and all of these kind of things that tend to complicate it. From the eyes of a business management position. Now, suppose that a vendor offers, and this is already in the market today in the world, but of course, just as your telephones that you hold in your hand have advanced in the last 10 years from what they were 10 years ago, and leaps and bounds from what they were 20 years ago, and certainly looking at longer distance periods of time, these artificial humanoid greeters and desk representatives, which are in places in some parts of the world today, in a limited ability situation. They will replace humans for human factor reasons. They don't have to be maintained. They can work 24 hours a day. They can be brought online as fast as the computer comes up. They don't have the health concerns. Everything about them is designed to be replaced. You could just replace the whole units, as it would be called. And they, as you can see from the earlier video that I posted, which is just one of many available now online, that the appearance of these is getting more and more human-like, to where that they look very much like a human. Well, where am I going with this? First off, the first impact that will be noticed in the business world is efficiency. Nowadays, when you call to do business on the phone, most businesses have went to the jobbed out market out there for their phone services. And when you finally get through the system to a human being, which is very antiquated at this time, the telemarketing system is antiquated. And when you want to go in now and get to a real human being, you're on hold sometimes, go through the system, have to make several calls, and it's very rare that you get someone in your own country. Sometimes they're going to a country where they could get better costs for their labor, for their telemarketers, and a higher level of education for the price. And it's very annoying, but yet it's the way they do business. So that's going to change very soon, because of the fact that I actually see in the real world applications of motor computers, systems, networks in aerospace. I'm going to tell you it's already here. AI is here. AI is an application and use in industry, especially in aerospace. The rover we've got going to the moon right now is an advanced step up in miniature applications of artificial intelligence. But the companies that are coming out with the new models of course, they're not being produced in the United States. They're being produced in countries such as Japan. Japan seems to be the leader right now. And they're integrating such things as beauty, pleasant to look at, voice, all these things that are very appealing to the human senses. And who wants to look at an ugly person when they can have the most beautiful, gorgeous person, handsome person sitting in front of them? See, that sort of thing goes into the marketing. So you're going to have folks who are very good at their jobs, greeting people there, that are going to be replaced for a lot of reasons, including appearance. So it's amazing to me. The applications for the economy is going to become more and more economical for companies that want to incorporate this. And what it's going to do, it's going to go to more places. And it's going to replace more and more people in the job market in these areas. And of course, the solution is what it's been for everything in the last few decades: retrain, re-educate, retrain, re-educate, as far as the human being. These are effects we're already seeing in society. A quick example would be in the automotive manufacturing industry. Go talk to any person who worked on the assembly lines in Detroit that used to work on the assembly lines, and see what his job's been taken by. His job's been taken by automated systems. Automated systems include robotics that may or may not even appear human at all. Robotics and applications of artificial intelligence do not have to appear human in any way, form, or fashion. The only time they have to appear human is when you have to put a more human face upon such applications. And that's where we're going with this. I hope that I've done a good job in trying to, from my experience, show you where I have personally witnessed applications of the beginnings in the beginning phases of artificial intelligence and mechanics. Mechanical applications are where we're going. And what am I getting to here now? When we look at the scripture in Revelations, and I'm going to bring down the view here a little bit where you can see all the words. The scripture we're going to go to is just one of many to build any topic or view of any thing as far as any kind of doctrine about prophecy. And what I want to show you here is something that John on the Isle of Patmos was shown, and he revealed and wrote to us in the Holy Bible in Revelation 13:15. And he had power to give life unto the image, not to the beast, but to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast, not the beast, but the image of that beast, should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Oh, my goodness, that's kind of a strange statement, especially if the technology is not in place to give an image the power to speak. And especially if that image was not given power to kill those that would not worship this beast. Well, it seems like almost a menagerie of statement, kind of hard to sort out, kind of like a three-dimensional puzzle that we've got to put together in order to be able to see the picture. So let me give you what I can of that picture a little bit here. When you begin to integrate artificial intelligence into management systems now, what we're talking about is something that has not only went local, regional, national, but global. Such systems are military applications for intel, military applications for communications, and command. In the global system of communications and command now, the satellite systems are key because the satellite systems are the link. Everyone knows. We don't need to get down into technicals about microwave interface and all of that kind of stuff to understand that the satellites are key to linking everything. So there we have the electronic components mechanically linked worldwide in order to be able to allow communication. Now, communications depend on people being in place. But suppose you need less people in place, and we're at that state now, to where that already our computer systems are sensitive to pick up things that people used to pick up. for instance, if a missile test is going underway that hadn't been announced, such as happens routinely in North Korea, it's picked up electronically and it's identified electronically, not by a human. And then that some human is alerted. The message is sent to some human. So you see, already in the link in the chain, the computer has become the first source. The computer has become the identifier. And what is happening here is the race is on now for AI in the sense of the supercomputer. In the sense of supercomputer, what we're talking about is a network of computers working together in a logic system to where the power of these computers come to a place that simulates the ability of the human mind and brain. But not just any human mind and brain, but to simulate a well-orchestrated, well-disciplined structure of command and thought. And what we're going to see in the not too distant future is you're going to see aircraft, and I'm talking about military aircraft, of course. Well, we already have the UAVs, the unmanned aerial vehicles. We all know about the Predator and all of these, and these are the first models to be put into service. These are not the end result. We all know about the recent test that was done by the Navy of a completed landing and takeoff of a pilotless fighter, landing and taking off from an aircraft carrier. Let me tell you just a little bit about what I know about Autoland. The Autoland systems are so good on aircraft now that have been in service for quite some time that they don't use them at some airports intentionally because they wear out the same spot on the runway. They leave so many marks on the same spot on the runway. They're so accurate that they do that. Another reason they don't use them is to allow the pilots a chance to exercise their skills, of course. But what I'm saying is the auto-land, auto-takeoff systems are so accurate that they are so precision. We've got some good robotics, folks, out there in application today. Well, what about where the Bible talks about the abomination standing in the holy place? Okay, well, most of us agree that looks like it's talking about the Mosque of Omar, sitting where the temple used to sit. And I agree with that. But also think along these lines, behind the pulpit, what about when the messenger is not a real person? The holy place, is that the pulpit, the sacred desk? What represents the Holy of Holies today? Is it our own bodies, the tabernacle of our own bodies? My goodness, we could go way into the future in our theories on that one. But what about the real world? The real world is changing around us. It's changing the way we live. It's changing the way we do all things. The age of artificial intelligence is already here. Yes, I admit we're in the early parts, but it changes so rapidly. Nowadays, you walk into any public place and look around, you're going to see someone self-absorbed and sitting there holding what we call the smartphone device or other electronic device, and the adult that normally would not be distracted by toys is sitting over there, and he's totally absorbed in his own little world, and every extra moment he's got is playing with this little device that he's holding in his hand. What's going on inside his forehead and what's going on inside his hand right there is totally absorbed into that until his schedule requires him to be somewhere else. Just think, isn't that something that we have arrived at a time like that? And I recently read an article that had been posted in one of the forums that mentioned, why aren't people going to church? Why aren't people going to church? And they're asking the same question that a lot of us would ask. And then you really look at how society's changed, and you think about folks you work with in the work world, and what are they looking forward to on Sundays? Well, you can tell by what they're talking about. They're talking about the next big game. Oh, they're talking about their next fishing trip or their next hunting trip. Well, we've had fishing trips and we've had hunting trips now for generations. And I don't have anything against fishing. I love to fish myself. But there was a reason why that God instituted early in the Bible that the Sabbath day should be kept holy. And that it would be a sign of his people from there on. The world is changing around us. So do we change everything in our life just because the world around us changed? Well, sure you do. If you want to buy bread, if you want to be able to feed your family, you're going to adapt to the society you live in. That's the power of the change in society. So where's AI going to get its power? How many of you totally trust your president? Would you trust an artificial intelligence that can make the decisions faster than he could, without any emotion, without any prejudice, without any personal agenda? In other words, no natural affections? Does that make sense? Well, you say, well, right now, I don't think we have that option. How far do you think we are away from that option? When we already have AI intelligence operating mechanically in transportation systems that carry people from point A to point B in multiple numbers, and just the man is becoming more and more a redundant factor. Applications for AI are all around us, in every field, and it's getting to a place to where in the future, in the advanced world is what I'm talking about, to where that the human factor is going to be there as he's needed, that AI is going to be a situation to be maintained by humans. And it's going to get to the point to where whether we realize it or not, or whether we want it or not, we're going to serve AI more than AI serves us. And somebody might say, well, I'll argue with that one. Well, a man was arguing with me 40 years ago, too, that we would even have such things, that it would ever go to that point. Because at the time, 40 years ago, it seemed like science fiction, that we're there today. Well, I'm going to tell you, when a computer has access, a network of computers. When I say computer, I'm talking about a group of computers, network of computers linked together, kind of like the central nervous system links to the rest of our bodies. Our foot and our big toe are all linked to the brain as well as our eyes, our ears, and all of that. And when these computers are all linked together in a system and they're getting more and more advanced, to the point to where it can be self-maintained, it can do its own self-diagnostics, it can tell itself what's wrong with it, when it's wrong with it, when it needs to have a component changed, and it can think in the spheres of logic that would be able to outperform the human competitor in most decision-making things. And don't you think that can't apply when it comes into politics and everything else? Because everything that is human is subject to the weaknesses of our human carnal side. But something that is not given to natural affection, emotions, would not be susceptible to this. And in a real world management system, such as something that's going to be managing nuclear weapons, something that's going to be responding to some threat, national security is a major thing. And even economic threat or economic concerns are consideration to catch, to detect problems in the economy. Anything and everything that a man knows by experience now can be programmed into AI. And the systems can be put in place and integrated in such a way to function as a human management system in its artificial presentation. We're getting there. So what I'm asking you today is if this is going to affect the way we do business, it's going to affect whether or not we travel anymore. Eventually, you're going to see changes. Those of us who are still living, I'm at the age to where my life becomes limited by my age more and more. And but our children, our grandchildren, especially our grandchildren, are growing up in a different world today. And I'm not an escapist. I'm not one of these guys that tells everybody, well, the Lord has to come now. The Lord has to come. It's just everything's been fulfilled. Well, I'm sorry, everything has not yet been fulfilled. Hear me. I'm telling you, my specialty is in research into theological considerations, theology. I'm a minister of the gospel. I am telling you, everything has not yet been fulfilled. Now, someone could take me back to the words of Jesus there. When Jesus told them standing around, there are some standing here who will not see death until all these things be fulfilled. All these things, which the very specific things which Jesus was talking about. And I'm not getting into preterism and all that right now, or any arguments or any debate. But when we look at Revelation 13:15, folks, I'll tell you, we are close to that. I'm not one of these guys that stand up there telling you the Lord's probably going to come tonight. He could. Just like those back at the World Trade Center. I know where I was at when that all happened. And none of us were staying up watching for it, were we? But we didn't, all of us were kind of caught off guard, except those of us that were warned of God that something was going on. That night I was sleeping. I was asleep. I was working night shift at Trans World Airlines. One of our planes went into one of those trade centers. American Airlines had bought Trans World at that time. And I had been looking at the crew, and I was at a big barbecue there in Kansas City, Missouri, when American bought Trans World Airlines, and the crew of that very aircraft was up there, and they brought their big 767 up nose to nose there, pretty much with the old TWA Connie that was from the museum there. And the flight crew that went into that World Trade Center was right there, and I shook hands with most of them. And I want to tell you, it impacted me. The next day when I reported for duty, and there wasn't any lights in the sky that night from aircraft, and it was an eerie feeling, when FAA shut down all the flight systems for 3 days. And I want you to know, when I looked at the airplane that night, I looked at it for the first time as a weapon of mass destruction, and I had never done that before. I never looked at a civil aircraft as a weapon of mass destruction. It was impacting on me. It affected my emotions. It affected my thoughts. It changed my world, as it did many of you. But think about the families that day that were on the ground, that before all this happened, were going to work, representative from their families going to work, and they were having coffee, say at some coffee shop. One went one way, one went to the other. One went to the World Trade Center, and one went the other direction. And in a moment, and in a twinkling of an eye, one was taken and the other left. It applies. So when we're talking about the applications for our beliefs about the catching away and the day of the Lord and the rapture, I want you to know there's many avenues of looking into this that our faith and our beliefs can take us. The day of the Lord is not limited like our days are. My friend, we're coming up on an age when you need to make your decision for the Lord. And I'm going to wrap this up. And I want everybody to remember I told you this, that this world is changing in ways that if you think it's changed now, you're going to see amazing things, as it was in the days of Noah. When you're going to see things that you never thought you would ever see. It's being introduced to you a little bit by some of the sci-fi fiction movies and things that are out, but they're mostly for entertainment. You're going to be seeing the real world applications. Your children are. They're going to be growing up in that world, and they're going to be trying to figure out, where do I fit in? And if you don't steer and guide them and help them understand their identity and their spiritual identity, they're not going to be able to fit in. They're going to be a lost generation in a lost world. But it's up to you to make that decision now today. And I'm going to say, like I told someone the other day, who was trying to make excuse. Well, I know I'm not this, I'm not that. Why? Why are you not in church? You do it by choice. You either want to serve God or you don't want to serve God. Don't make up any excuses, because you don't have any. If you want to serve God, if you want to be of service to the kingdom of God, as a functioning part of the church, you can be. Satan and all of his angels, his fallen ones, the many demons cannot stop you when you make up your mind to serve God. That's Bible. That's Bible. So I'm telling you today, don't wait till tomorrow. Today is the day of salvation. You need God now and today in leadership of your life. I want God to lead my life. I want God to control my destiny. I want God to be there in the hour when there's nothing around me but confusion. I want God to be around me when there's nothing around me but order and control. I want God to be around me when I see nothing but chaos and destruction. I want God to be with me when I see nothing but a controlled environment. The many contradictions of life do not change God. The changes in our world and in the society around us do not change God. They do not affect God. I want the ever eternal consistency of God in control of my life. He is our eternal hope. Think on these things. I want to end this discussion in a short prayer. Please join me. Heavenly Father, Lord our God, truly it is, as it has been said so many times, we need you today as never before. And we're going to need you tomorrow in ways that we cannot even comprehend today. Therefore, we take thought for today and we pray, Lord, thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth this day as it is in heaven in our lives. Change our hearts, change our mind, change our view, change our thoughts, everything about us. For your kingdom's sake, O Lord, I pray. In Jesus' name, amen. Farewell. Consider these things in prayer. God bless.